What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast for us to talk about AEW and New Japan's Forbidden Door 2023 pay-per-view, which just ended a minute ago. We're going to run down the card, talk about what happened, talk about not only the results, but our review of everything. And who are we? Well, you should know by now. If you don't know, I'm your host as always, Tony Mango. Joining me as always is Callum Wiggins.
Hello there.
So before we get started, I need to preface everything. If you didn't see it in the chat already that I had typed it out, I am sick today. I am exhausted. I have a really bad throat. And that's going to be like a low energy, not me talking really loud type of podcast today. But I have good things to say about it, mostly on the thumbs up good match side of things. Callum will probably be the one breaking down things a little bit more technically. I mean, you would be doing that anyway, because this is all, you can explain more about some of the little hidden details that might have happened in the match that went over my head and all. So apologies if you were hoping that you would get some kind of massive amount of energy from me. It's not a reflection on the card. I thought that this was a really good show overall. How are you feeling about this?
This show's like transcendent. It might be among, if not the greatest pay-per-view, at least from like just what I look for in pro wrestling. Then yeah, this is about as good as you're ever going to get.
There wasn't really anything on this card at all that I can think of that I thought was bad.
No,
some things fell a little short, and some things kind of just were there to me. Like, yeah, we'll talk about some matches here and there that I was like, you know what, if I didn't see that match, I don't think I would have missed anything at all. But there is a match of the year candidate on this list. So that's something that I don't know if I will end up finding something that beats that from AEW this year. Yeah, there's some good contenders from earlier this year on top of that. But pretty much every segment to me, I mostly wrote out, yeah, this was a good match.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that every match either met or exceeded expectations. I don't think anything fell short or was disappointing in any way. It's rare to get a card where everything goes well for the most part. So yeah, I can't really, I have very little, if anything, negative to say about this entire show.
Even things like the BR app didn't really crap out on me as many times as it normally does. It was only 3 times that the thing got muted, and then I had to restart it and all, but even that worked pretty well for me. So this was pretty smooth sailing, which made it a lot easier for me, because I was just like, man, I am exhausted today. I was like not looking forward to having to try to sit through a pay-per-view that would have been a bore, or to try to jingle around with that kind of bullshit with the pay-per-view options and so. Which app do you use for this? Do you check it out on New Japan World, or do you check it out on like Fight, or what is it?
Oh, you have to go through Fight. If you were to go for New Japan World, it would only be in Japanese.
Oh, okay. So I guess that they don't. Do they do that for Wrestle Kingdom? They have the English commentators on there, but
well, yeah, because that's a New Japan show.
Yeah, but they don't. They don't do that for Forbidden Door.
Well, no, because I mean, New Japan has a deal with AEW in terms of you watch AEW shows in Japan through New Japan World, but that's only with Japanese commentary. In the same way that if they're running like a show in the US, you can watch it through New Japan World, but only with Japanese commentary, and then you have to buy it on Fight if you want it in English commentary. Admittedly, you also have to buy it on New Japan World. It doesn't come like free on New Japan World for those sort of shows.
It's not like the Peacock kind of situation.
No. No,
okay.
Well, you get it. You get it if it's like a Wrestle Kingdom, or it's a strictly like New Japan calendar show. But if it's like a New Japan Strong show in America or something like that, then you'd have to pay separately for it.
Well, all things considered, not too bad. But we started off here with the 0 hour, 4 matches on the card for this. One match that was advertised for the card that didn't end up happening was Adam Cole against Tom Lawler. The reason why is Adam Cole is sick. I don't know if he has the same thing that I have or not. But instead, they did a dark match, apparently, with Tom Lawler beating Serpentico, I think it was. Yeah, Serpentico, and just a regular dark match, not even like a pre-show aired match whatsoever. But we had Mogul Embassy beating Chaos and El Desperado, who eventually joined the commentary team for that. I thought it was funny. Excalibur's like, yeah, see, they have a masked guy on their commentary team too. This was, you're going to hear it from me a bunch of times, this was a solid enough match. I don't really know what much else to say. I had no notes down for it whatsoever. I actually have no notes for every single one of the 4 pre-show matches, except for shock that one of them went the one way. Not really shock, but like I thought that the other people would win.
I don't take notes, especially for shows that I actually want to just enjoy and lose myself in. So and this was happened over like 5 hours ago at this point, so it's difficult to remember everything about it. But I recall enjoying it. I know that there was some good like sequences. It seemed quite interesting to have El Desperado teaming with a group of Chaos people when Suzuki Gun doesn't exist anymore. He's kind of just doing his own thing at the moment in New Japan, but he didn't feel like he fit in with the group. But I guess that was kind of the point. And then you have Swerve Strickland get a victory, which I think is important. I think he needs to keep winning matches when possible, especially after he did a great job carrying Tanahashi on the Collision. So I think he earned to get a victory over Rocky Romero here with the double foot stomp. Yeah, I can't remember anything that was like particularly stand out or amazing in this match, but it was solid enough for a pre-show opener.
And I would say the same thing for Athena beating Billy Starks for the advancement to the women's section of the Owen Hart Foundation Cup tournament, which is this is the first match that I had seen of Billy Starks that I can at least like recall that I was like, oh, okay, I'm watching a Billy Starks match instead of just happen to be half-ass watching a thing on Dark or something. She seems good. Athena did a good job. They had a good match. It was about 8 minutes or so, I think. Yeah, 7:50. And, it captured my attention the entire time. They both looked good. Athena winning, I think, is the right call. And thumbs up. Not much to say.
Yeah, Athena's, in her heel persona is very good at playing to the crowd, and she berates the referees constantly, and that allows those few moments of like distraction or frustration, allow the baby faces to get a few shots in on her. But she pretty much controls the flow of every match she's in at the moment. They said on commentary, I think that she's on a 46 match winning streak.
Nice.
Now. So yeah, like she just wins all the time in Ring of Honor. She went prior to this when she was fighting on like Dark or Elevation, she was winning all the time as well. So yeah, she gets another victory here, and someone would have to break that streak if she was to not win this tournament. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But yeah, I thought the match was really good. I thought that you had quite a definitive finish with the way that like she took down Starks at the end of it, and like then she just rolled her back into the ring to finish her off. So with the I can't remember what her her flipping like code breaker style finisher is, but
it sounded, if I remember correctly, that they called it the O face.
No, that's her. That's what the name for the Eclipse is.
Why is she going with the O face right now?
She always went with that when it wasn't in WWE. They only called the Eclipse in WWE. It's always been the O face.
Huh? I didn't know that.
I think it's the idea that I think it's the idea that when you connect with it, the person who's hit is like. Again, I don't know the logic entirely behind it, but the idea that like they're dazed and so it looks like they've had an O-face.
Well, that took me by surprise. Took my wife by surprise. She's like, the O-face? Wait, what? What am I missing? And I'm like, I can't tell you. I don't know. And then El Phantasmo comes out, and I was just like, I don't know who this guy is, because I just don't recognize El Phantasmo. I know I've seen him in something before. I know I've watched at least one Wrestle Kingdom that he's performed in, some kind of multi-man tag or something. But
you would have potentially seen him at Forbidden Door last year because he teamed with the Young Bucks against.
Okay, yeah.
Against was it Shingo, Darby and Sting. So yeah, he was at that point in time. He was in Bullet Club. He's no longer in Bullet Club. He was kicked out by the new leader of Bullet Club in New Japan, David Finlay. So he's one of the few people in New Japan who doesn't have any kind of faction affiliation right now. He's kind of just doing his own thing. And then Stu Grayson comes out, and I'm sure a lot of people that aren't following Ring of Honor.
Yep, I was confused.
Yeah, but he comes out with
The Righteous. Was their name?
Yeah, The Righteous. Yeah.
Yeah. So that took me by surprise, especially because I was like, wait a minute, I thought that they said that Stu Grayson was in this match, and the one guy, I don't know their names.
Vincent and Dutch.
So is it Vincent as the guy with the longer hair?
Yeah.
So the fact that he was like walking out as like the main featured guy for a good portion of the ramp, I was like, I thought that it was Stu Grayson. And then I'm like, oh, okay, Stu Grayson's behind them. Oh, that guy's totally stealing the spotlight. So he's not at all like affiliated with Dark Order right now. Like not even just by proxy of like, well, he's in Ring of Honor, but maybe we'll bring him in. Like he's just a part of this group now.
Yep. For the time being. Yeah.
Huh.
So yeah, he turned his back on Dark Order. They a couple of weeks ago they had a trios match on Ring of Honor between those three and the three remaining members of Dark Order, which Grayson won by pinning Evil Uno.
Man, come on, Stuno.
So yeah, so they decided to just continue that story here, and you had Phantasmo get the victory, which I think is right. I mean, it was a good match because these two just put some really good stuff together. They're two very solid workers that have some like big moves about them. But Phantasmo is going into the G1, his second ever G1. So, and Stu Grayson is, with no disrespect to Ring of Honor, just with no disrespect to Ring of Honor, is just part of a trios team in Ring of Honor. So it doesn't really affect him to lose this match. So yeah, it was the right call to have Phantasmo win.
Without even getting that context, I got the feeling that Phantasmo was positioned higher up in the roster.
It's big, yeah, he's definitely a bigger deal.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, well, I'm kind of assuming that he's going to win, and it makes more sense. But now, even when you explain it even more, it makes even more sense than that. And then we had Shingo Takagi, Bushi, and Hiromu Takahashi beating the United Empires, TJP, Kyle Fletcher, and Jeff Cobb. Los Ingobernables de Japón was something that I was trying to explain a little bit with my limited knowledge to Caroline, because she was like, wait, what was that? The Ungovernables of Japan? And I was like, yeah, I cannot tell you much information about them, but I was thinking that United Empire was going to win. So that was the one where I was surprised, because I was just like, all right, I'm assuming United Empire wins this. And then when the match was over, I was just like, wait, shit. Okay. Were you kind of shocked about that, or was it kind of a 50-50, or were you actually leaning more towards Los Ingobernables?
I mean, it was your typical New Japan style, like opening one of those like 6-man tags you get the first half of a show, in that you knew that they both had a guy that's going to be there to take the fall, which is Bushi or TJP, and so essentially it was just a case of I don't know which one of them is going to win. I just know who's going to get pinned depending on which one is going to win. You always know that when you watch a New Japan match, almost 90% of the time. So I think it's like, it makes sense, even though Kyle Fletcher and members of the United Empire are more closely attached to AEW. LIJ, like Shingo and Hiromu, are two of the top guys in New Japan. Hiromu's the junior heavyweight champion. Shingo was recently the King of Pro Wrestling champion. He's former world heavyweight champion. So yeah, it does not surprise me at all. They would be the ones selected to get the victory here. And so Shingo beats TJP by hitting him with the Made in Japan, gets the pinfall. Again, like the specific details of this match don't really need to go into too much depth about it. It was just a fun little just opening little pre-show match. This was like as close as we've had on the entire thing to just being New Japan versus New Japan, because essentially all these guys are essentially more prominently New Japan guys than AEW guys, with the exception of Kyle Fletcher. Yeah,
I was kind of surprised about that, because I figured that if they were going to put another 6-man in there, that they would have had them against like or at least throw in like one true AEW team, like maybe Dark Order or throw FTR in the card or something. You know what I mean? Like, I was a little bit shocked about just those two teams against each other, but it was a match. It was a fine match. And that was the pre-show, which makes me remind me that I should be reminding everybody else that you should be leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you're listening live, try to chat it up in the super chat section or the regular chat itself. I see Frankie's in the chat saying he's shocked about, what was it that you were shocked about? The ending of that, or was it shocked about the pay-per-view? Let us know. But if you are over there on YouTube, whether it's after the fact or it's during the show where it's live right now, make sure you're clicking on all the good stuff that you can see there, the like button, the join button, the subscribe button, that little notification bell, the little thanks button. And of course, stay tuned to the other things that you could see on like the Patreon side of things. When you click on the join button, you get access to those things too. So upcoming dark casts, the Pick a Poison tier, whatever it might be. And now Frankie's tossing out that he was surprised about the ending of the whole thing, which of course we'll get around to that a little bit later on. But let's start getting into the main card for this, which started off with MJF against Hiroshi Tanahashi for the AEW World Championship, which I thought was a good match. I mean, I'm going to be kind of a broken record here, but I like that it started off with MJF teasing he was just going to walk out and then trying to get disqualified at different points throughout the match. And it seemed like the crowd was kind of split a little bit. Some pro MJF people, some pro Tanahashi people. But ultimately, by the time we get around to the end of this match, it ends up being some distraction with the title. And then MJF is able to get the Dynamite Diamond ring out. Pretty standard affair. Hits Tanahashi with that. Goes for the pin. I wrote down textbook stuff. Simple and effective. Thumbs up.
Yeah, this had to be cleverly worked by MJF because just based on the previous night's match against Swerve Strickland and then what I saw in this match, and I've said it multiple times before in the build up to this, is that Tanahashi, his legs don't work anymore. He's taken so much damage over the years. I mean, as I say, he's been wrestling for probably close to 30 years at this point. He is very much broken down, and it was, again, the perfect choice for this because of being Mr. New Japan and being beloved by the New Japan audience. And so it was perfect to have MJF go against him. And MJF did all the clever heel shtick. He mocked the air guitar. He, when he had him in the abdominal stretch, he would always grab at the ropes. And then you had a nice spot of Bryce Ringsberg kicking his hand away from the ropes, which let him get caught up for a near fall. He sold for all of Tanahashi's offense. He got hit by a high fly flow crossbody off the ropes. He got hit with the dragon screw and was in the Texas Cloverleaf, and he was selling the knee a lot as well. And then when Tanahashi does go for the high fly frog splash, MJF gets his knees up, and so Tanahashi gets hurt, but so does MJF because he's been selling the knee the entire match. Yeah, it was just very clever, very simple, basic, just, not just get out, but try and keep it as basic as ever and let the personalities and the charisma of the two guys carry the weight of the match. And I feel they did a good job of it. And having MJF pin him by using the diamond ring is the best result because it fits in with MJF's character of cheating to win and just win by all costs. And Tanahashi, it protects him to a degree because he got cheated out of the victory. So yeah, I think win all round.
Not at all surprising for me to see some kind of cheating to win. Yeah, I think that suits it very well because it protects Tanahashi. And around this time frame, Caroline was like, "Are they going to let any of the New Japan guys win?" And I was like, "Oh, the last match, kind of, whatever." But we're going to come around to one of them soon enough.
Well, they have the last two matches both had the New Japan guys win. So
yeah, so it's just like one of those perception kind of things, but. As far as the perception of the crowd when it comes to CM Punk, not a warm response for him against Satoshi Kojima. He ended up playing heel throughout the whole thing, doing the Hulk Hogan ear taunt and all. There was a little part with Kojima popping his pecs, and then Punk doing the same. eventually Punk hits the GTS for the win, and then he goes for some push-ups after the bell, but then it ends up being like, okay, let me help up Kojima and raise his hand, and also I'm like, all right, well, you're doing the heel thing, you're doing the babyface thing. Kind of a little wires crossed moment in my mind. But the match itself, a fine match. Not my favorite of the night.
No, not the favorite, but it was rock solid. I think that Punk has come back as good as he was prior to the original injury before just after Double or Nothing. I think that he can work this style very well, and he's playing into the crowd as he should. Like, so many of the people in the audience hated him, and so he's playing up to it. He's doing the Hogan stuff. He's doing, like, taunting the crowd with his pecs and like mockings and of Kojima's moves as well. But Kojima is, considering the fact that he's 52 years old, and to be fair, there's a lot of guys of a similar age or older on this show as well, but he's a guy who's been around for a long, long time, but he's still very solid as well. Like, getting in some stiff chops and clotheslines, and so I think that they meshed together well, and they had a pretty, again, similarly old schoolish style, just straightforward. This is a tournament match. There's no clear heel or babyface, but Punk's going to work heel because the crowd is pretty much turning heel. And I think the ending was just, it was Punk taunting the crowd because he's angry at the crowd, but he still respects Kojima. So I think the push-ups was not a case of mocking his opponent. It was a case of, like, playing to the crowd's negative reception towards him. So yeah, I thought this was good. Punk qualifies for the next round as we would have expected. Hits the GTS again, which I guess was the one thing that he wouldn't have been able to do if Kenta would have been the guy facing him instead.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the main thing is that they just wouldn't have wanted Kenta to get. Kenta probably didn't want to get pinned by the move that CM Punk stole from him. So
yeah, but then again, they could have gotten around that with one hits the GTS, they kick out. The other hits the GTS, they kick out, and then eventually there was like a roll up or something, you know?
Yeah, but Kenta didn't want to lose.
Yeah, so. Seems like that's probably what the case was.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a fine match. Punk advances as you expect him to do, and then he's going to face either Samoa Joe or Roderick Strong next, which should be fun as well. So, yeah, again, this was just, I think these first two matches were nothing like super spectacular, but they were just good, solid matches to get you grounded in, and then the next match felt a bit more special.
Yeah, I was much more of a fan of the four-way for the International Championship. Orange Cassidy retaining successfully over Katsuyori Shibata, Daniel Garcia, and Zack Sabre Jr., which, you know, I mean, you give me an Orange Cassidy match, I'm probably going to enjoy it. I'm a fan of Zack Sabre Jr. I haven't seen much of Shibata, but what I've seen of him, yeah, cool. And I'm a fan of Daniel Garcia, so you put these four together, not at all surprised that this was a good match. And there aren't too many moments that I could really pinpoint, which is kind of par for the course for a lot of this pay-per-view, but it just was like, it kept my attention the entire time. This was actually while I was eating on top of that. So normally there's a, like, you know, a portion of just me being like, all right, well, you know, I'm focusing on having a conversation outside of that and eating and all. And instead I was pretty like stuck on just watching this match. And I'm glad Orange Cassidy retained. I'm glad they had a little moment afterward where the three champions were kind of have a little bit of a face off. Thumbs up again. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, I can mostly play back a lot of the stuff that happened in this match because I just felt they just blended perfectly together. You had, just from the opening moments where you had Orange Cassidy do the light kicks on everyone else, and so he gets like chucked out of the ring, and then they all starting to work on each other. You had like Daniel Garcia trying to, well, basically a lot of the match focused around the fact that Zack Sabre Jr. and Shibata really can't stand each other, and so they were taking shots at each other. And Daniel Garcia was by the side of it when they were doing like trading uppercuts and forearms, and Garcia was trying to get involved, and so they just slapped Garcia or they just uppercutted him away. And so he just tried to take a few shots and then do some dancing, and then they would take a shot at him and he would do some more dancing. And like he's gotten that so over. It's just so brilliant. And also what I noticed here and noticed in some recent matches as well, he's still getting the "You're a wrestler" chants, which means that they haven't lost that opportunity for him to break away from the Jericho Appreciation Society. People are still into that when it does eventually happen, so that was good to see. But there were just some cool spots, just them all trading suplexes with each other. You got like flurries of different moves going into it. Had like Shibata hit an orange punch after Cassidy tried to hit one, but Cassidy hit one, but his hand had already been worked over by Zack Sabre Jr., who was just stomping all over it constantly. So it meant that wasn't anywhere effective. We've had Zack Sabre Jr. managed to reverse the mousetrap pin into like a submission attempt of his own. Like some of his, I thought like Zack was the standout to me in this match just because of his flurry of different submissions and like the different pinfalls that he can do that nobody else can really do to the same degree he can. It's just, I think he holds everything together so well, and like he is by far and away the best like technical submission style wrestler in the world right now. And yeah, they had a flurry of offense towards the end. Zack Sabre Jr. gets taken out by a pole driver by Garcia. Shibata is then able to get Garcia into the PK, so he hits his penalty kick. But Cassidy then throws Shibata out of the ring, pins Garcia, retains the title. So now he's really at the point where he's clinging on by the skin of his teeth.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still champion. They had that little stare down afterwards, so that could point towards a potential future title match, or whether it's just like a moment of just those guys standing with the titles. I've got in mind who I think is going to be Cassidy, but
you don't think that it's Zack Sabre Jr.?
No.
Who are you leaning towards?
Takeshita.
You know, that wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world, because that's a good title for him to have to boost him and not get involved in whatever the fuck they're doing with this TNT title. You know, it's probably going to go back to Wardlow or do any of that kind of stuff. So I mean, that's a good like alternative route to take.
I mean, there's very little that I think they'll go. I have very little doubt they'll go with like a bad option for this. It doesn't necessarily have to be Takeshita. It could be Zack Sabre Jr. or it could be Daniel Garcia, or there's plenty of options, plenty of good names on the AEW roster that it could be. Just at the moment, just based on, again, we'll talk about when we get to the 10-man tag, from what I saw of that, it feels like it's primed for him to hold it for a while.
And of course, I'm down to see Orange Cassidy keep retaining this. Like we've been saying, every time that he has another match, it's always like, well, the next one might be the last one, but it'd be cool if he just keeps it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like next week. It doesn't have to be at the very next show that Takeshita wins. It could be like a month or two down the line. I'm totally happy with Orange Cassidy still defending, because he's not had a single, I don't even say like he's had like an average match as champion. Everyone's been good to great. So
yeah, he is far above and beyond my current pick for best championship run this year.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against it. I think that I'd say like the only one that's comparable in like all of wrestling right now is probably Gunther's IC title reign, and even Gunther is like, he doesn't wrestle as often as Cassidy does. So,
right, yeah.
So I think that he's at the moment he's standing head and shoulders above anyone in wrestling right now in terms of just taking a title and saying, yeah, I'm gonna just make this the most important thing feel like the most important thing on the show.
So the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship match followed this one. Sanada retaining successfully over Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Pro Sanada crowd. So that prediction I had of Canada for Sanada ended up being true, it seemed. Although everybody seemed to be feeling the Jungle Boy heel turn. And he had a few spots here and there where he got some shots in, but this mostly gave me the impression that this was just like, all right, Sanada, I was going to say Sanada again. Sanada was just the better guy, straight up. He wins with the moonsault. There's no hubbub after the match with him involved at the very least. But there is with Jungle Boy and with Hook. Because they get to a point where they're on the ramp. Hook decides to hold up Jungle Boy's arm and, you know, like hey, like we had a good match kind of thing. And Jungle Boy hits him with a clothesline. So heel turn executed for Jack Perry. We all were leaning in that direction. We all thought that was the best possible course that they could take it. Again, thumbs up. It works.
Yeah, the match itself is probably the one that I will leave with the least memory of. Not to say that it was a necessarily bad match. It just felt, obviously, we knew that Sanada was going to win, so there was no jeopardy involved in that, and I didn't buy any near falls by Jack Perry or anything like that. So,
bog standard kind of thing.
Yeah, I thought it felt like quite tepid for the most part. I mean, it was good. I'd say neither of these two ever have bad matches. It's just a case of it never came close to blowing me away, or like, oh, they really stepped out because they knew that this match wasn't going to be as over, or they knew that the result was never in doubt, so they tried super hard to add an extra layer to it. I just felt, okay, they went out and they had a solid title match, and the result happened. And then the bigger story was the heel turn afterwards, which I would say in execution, it was very good from Perry's side of things, like hitting that clothesline, and then the way that he interacted with the crowd. He already feels like he has 10 times the charisma he had as a babyface, or at least in the build up to the Double or Nothing match. Just as soon as he started interacting with the crowd and holding up the title the way that he did, it's just like, okay, he needed this desperately. I'm not like 100% sure about the timing of it or the gravitas that was put onto the beatdown of Hook by like Taz at ringside. Obviously, Taz is going to be concerned about it because he's Hook's father.
Yeah, but they haven't had him like leave ringside commentary for the rest of the night. And
but I was kind of like, the impression of it's one clothesline. It's like, and I would get more invested in that one clothesline if we'd have had more build between Hook and Jack Perry as a team prior to this happening. Because if it's like, okay, they'd been teaming together for ages and ages. I know they teamed together like very early in the year or late last year, but then they kind of took a break from it because Perry was fighting Christian, and then he concentrated on the world title, and so Hook was on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So if they'd have like done this segment and then, had him teaming with Hook for a little while, and then maybe then getting a shot at the tag titles and losing that, and that's when you deck him, then maybe I can see a bit more resonance with it. I think if for this one to have had as big of an impact with me as it could have, and don't get me wrong, I think it's still successful, and it definitely had the crowd definitely got into it, so I can't say it was a bad job. Right. But what I would have probably done is have Jack Perry throw him off the stage or something.
Yeah, something a little bit more impactful than just one clothesline, and then Hook sells it like he got hit with, a frying pan to the face or something. Yeah. But it was a little lackluster on that front, I agree.
I also think it was quite interesting is that when he does deck Hook, the primary chant outside of like the chorus of boos that hits him is "You fucked up," which I think is good because obviously it works for Jack Perry in terms of he can turn heel and potentially show more character in his desperation to win a title, but it also means the crowd is super into Hook.
Like you fucked up by doing that to Hook, he's going to get back to you. And
yeah, exactly. So it's like, we probably know where it's going, but the whole story is that. But the whole story could have potentially just been all about Jack Perry, but it's actually a case of, he did that. He's really made a mistake because Hook's going to absolutely destroy him now. So it's good to see the crowd is still as into Hook as they were pretty much since his debut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, like the Jack Perry throwing the FTW title towards Hook means that maybe that's going to lead towards that title match that we were talking about. Maybe we get that singles title in the FTW title side of it, and then that can build up some more heat. Maybe Hook beats him for it again down the line. I don't know how they plan on really playing this out, how long they're planning on making this feud, but definitely the right call, making him turn heel. And now I'm excited to see what they do going forward. So that's positive. Another positive throughout the night, 10-man tag team match, Blackpool Combat Club and Konosuke, Takeshita, and Shota Umino against the Elite, Eddie Kingston, and Tomohiro Ishii. Couple moments here and there, the Bucks bouncing around on the ropes and all. Nothing that we haven't seen just as good, if not better, before. This was another one of the matches that featured the whole two guys just chop or punch each other back and forth. I was like, I think this is a fourth throughout the night. But that's just a regular thing. You know, it's one of those tropes for these types of shows. One of the big standout moments for this was a moment that, or at least for me, I don't know if anybody else, it resonated with him. Takeshita hit Ishii with this forearm. That for a split second, I was just like, man, did he really knock him out? He did a great job selling that. Because he just like dropped like a bag of bricks.
Yeah, Ishii has for the longest time been one of, if not my favourite guy in all of New Japan. And it's partly that underdoggy spirit, and the fact that like he's a guy that, especially at an age when, not to discredit them too much, but fucking Evil and Sanada have been world champions, he's never ever going to get that belt. But he has always worked so hard, and he has such great matches, and he's such a brilliant seller, as well as like just a guy who absorbs such a ridiculous amount of punishment that I was super excited to see what he would do in this, and the interactions that he had with Takeshita throughout this match were some of the most exciting stuff that happened.
Yeah, they were really, that was like one of the main stories of this, was the two of them against each other.
I think they're probably going to fight one-on-one in some capacity soon.
Probably.
I don't know when that's going to be, because obviously the G1 is starting, and it's not starting super soon. It's happening in the middle of July when it kicks off. There is a New Japan Strong show in I believe on the 4th and 5th of July. There's going to be like two shows taking place, so I wouldn't be surprised if one of those, like a match on one of those, was just a singles between Takeshita and Ishii.
It gave me the vibe that they weren't done. Yeah. I was just kind of assuming that maybe it would be like a future episode of Collision or something, but if Strong is the way to do it, kind of, because this is more of an AEW show overall, so it might be like, all right, well, to pay you back, we're going to do a thing where Takeshita goes over there and does that, and that was one of the big stories here. Another one of the big stories was Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley, which led to even a point where Kingston shoved Moxley out of the way and took 2 super kicks for him.
Yeah. So that plays back into the that like ages ago, like what it would have been like a year and a half, 2 years ago, even at this point, the tag match that they had with the Young Bucks for the tag titles, and when they had Moxley set up for either a BT trigger or like a double super kick, and Kingston in that match pushed himself out of the way, but at that point he was teaming with Moxley. In this case, he was Moxley's opponent, but he still managed to do that and block it or deflect it for him. So, you know, it's just that whole balance of he's teaming with the Elite, but it's only because he wants to get to Claudio. Like everything, he doesn't want to hurt Moxley. He's still friends with Moxley, even though they spent the first like 5 minutes of this match chopping the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Again, I find that spot super funny because everyone gets into the ring as well, and they're all like brawling around them, but they're just still exchanging chops in the middle of the ring, and it's just thought, yeah, this is just so much fun. And yeah, they continued to brawl for the most part. I mean, the big spot out of all of that was Moxley just getting in the ring and hitting a cutter on him towards the end of it, when they were all like getting in the ring and hitting some big moves on each other, because it's like, okay, Moxley clearly doesn't feel the same way about Kingston, about trying to protect him. He just took him straight out with a big move, and I think the crowd responded to that effectively. So yeah, and the rest of the guys just all did some cool stuff. Like you had the all Page and the Bucks like dishing out so much offense on Takeshita, like doing all their like trios and tag team spots on them. Had like them do like dives to the outside, and Page hitting like a moonsault press to the outside. He hit at one point. He hit a shooting star press onto I think it was Umino, like onto the outside. Yeah, and eventually it just all boils down to Ishii gets Yuta up for the brainbuster, gets him down, gets the pin. I was surprised by the result of having Ishii be the guy to get the victory.
Me too. I was just assuming, I had mentioned before in the predictions that I thought that maybe Kingston would get the win, so that way he has a little bit of momentum to challenge Claudio, or maybe Hangman Adam Page gets the win because he's sort of the de facto leader of this group, and once Omega's kind of not in the mix. Ishii was not who I was banking on. I figured if anything, if Ishii was going to be factored into the pin or the submission or anything, that he would be the one taking it,
Again, I think there's partly due to the fact that, again, he is in G1. And don't get me wrong, he's got no chance of winning the G1. And Umino's also in the G1. He also has no chance of winning the G1. But I think that maybe it's just a case of, okay, we've had a lot of AEW guys win. Maybe we get one of the New Japan guys the victory here. And if they're having the babyfaces go over, then we'll have Ishii get the pin. It also works a little more because it means that the other stuff is still unresolved, which means it can build off into other stuff moving forward. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking towards is that I believe we're getting Kingston versus Claudio at the next Ring of Honor show for the title. I think we're having Kingston win the title there. And then I think at either All In or All Out, we're getting Kingston versus Moxley for the Ring of Honor World title. That's the way that it's kind of shaping out for me. That's just based on, again, now I might be completely wrong, but just based on what the interaction saw here, where Kingston is still very reluctant to deal with Mox. Mox doesn't seem to have that same level of affection. There was like a point earlier in the match where like Claudio was getting some cheap shots in on Kingston and Moxley refused to get involved in it. But the fact that he took Kingston out with that cutter makes me feel like, okay, he's not as remorseful about this whole situation. So he would, if Kingston was the world champion, Moxley would go after him for that title if the opportunity presented itself. So that's what I'm thinking. Like, I think at very least we're getting some kind of Kingston Moxley one-on-one match at some point. So I think why not just make it for the Ring of Honor title? Seems like it would work out well for everyone.
Well, I mean, there's a few matches that you could get a bigger name for to try to boost up some more attention to Ring of Honor than to throw Moxley in there. That's for sure.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised that they'd go down that route that Moxley wouldn't win the title, because with Kingston, the moment is him beating Claudio. Mm-hmm. At that point, he doesn't need to have a long reign as champion.
No, he's very much the underdog type guy. And then Moxley's already had his world title runs, so that he's established, he's trustworthy, he's the guy that can draw a lot of eyes to the brand, and it's a good way to bump it up. I mean, depending on who you want to have be the next real big like baby face of the whole thing, whoever beats Moxley, it's going to look a lot more impressive than if they just beat, say Claudio loses it to Kingston and then Kingston loses it to, I don't know, Darius Martin. You know what I mean? Not that makes any sense, but, first name I thought of. So Yuta takes the pin. Ishii gets the pin. And everybody's arguing afterward. So more to follow up down the line. Toni Storm against Willow Nightingale, the match that follows up with that for the AEW Women's World Championship, which Storm retains, but Willow Nightingale puts up a good fight, and essentially throughout the whole match, seems like she should have been the rightful winner. So they did a good job setting her up with that. It honestly kept my attention the entire time, despite the fact that I've been against watching the Outcasts for such a long time. But I thought it was good. I liked it.
Yeah, I thought this match actually exceeded my expectations, and I still thought it was going to be a good match anyway, because the two people involved are really, really good. I thought that one of the best things that went for it is that you got some of the Outcast interference in early, but then they were chucked out for the second half of the match. So you did get down to just them going one-on-one with each other, and they gave Willow a lot of offense in this, which I think is fair enough. She hit some big power moves. She pounced Toni Storm out of the corner. Like, Toni Storm at one point by the end of the match was bleeding out the nose. So showed that there was a lot of like aggression thrown into it. Eventually Storm is able to like get the victory by getting the referee in the way. So she still cheats to win because she uses the referee distraction to put the thumbs in Willow's eyes and then hit the Storm Zero, gets the pin. So it wasn't by any means a clean victory, but it was one without constant interference at the end by Ruby and Saraya. So yeah, it's I thought it was a really well worked match. I have a lot of time for both of these two. I think that they're like two of the best women's wrestlers. I would say like Toni Storm in particular is like one of the best women's wrestlers in the world right now. Nightingale, I don't think he's at quite that level yet, but she has so much potential, and you can clearly see the ceiling is very high for her. One of the things that was quite interesting is so I watched this was the second wrestling show that I watched today after the Stardom show that took place this morning, which was the show that meant that no Stardom people were available for this one. But yeah, on that show there was the Artist of Stardom, which is their like trios title match, and one of the women who won the match and defended the title was Julia, who is essentially not the ace of Stardom, but one of the like top names of Stardom. And she, at the end of the match, issued a challenge to Willow Nightingale to fight her at those upcoming Strong shows for the title. So yeah, I'm super down for that because like Julia's like very, 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 I would say very good. That feels like it's even discrediting her. She's an absolutely awesome pro wrestler, and I would be excited to see what she does with Willow. And that one is also like the result would be completely up in the air, far more up in the air than this one, which again was a bit of a foregone conclusion. But yeah, so I think that they worked really well together, and you had some shots backstage of both Sky Blue and Britt Baker looking on. So she's clearly got a fair share of challenges coming forward. They plugged the Ruby Soho Britt Baker match that's coming up in the Owen Hart tournament. So yeah, thumbs up all around. I thought they really showed they belonged on this card.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of par for the course when it comes to Willow Nightingale. Every time I see her, she seems to make progress. So it's only a matter of time before she ends up winning one of these other main championships too. This is a good step in that right direction. Now, if you're talking about having a good match, the next match sucked. No, I'm just kidding. Will Ospreay successfully beating Kenny Omega to win the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship. This is my addition to the match of the year list. This was fucking great.
Yeah, it's there's so much in this one. I was one of the first things, actually, I know this is obviously quite late in the match, but when Justin Roberts announced that 30 minutes had elapsed, I thought that I'd only been watching for 10.
Right, yeah. I actually ended up writing that down in there. I was just like, oh my God, 30 minutes. I thought maybe 20 minutes had gone by at most.
Yeah, but there was so much going on. It started off pretty... This is like obviously a very similar thing for a lot of New Japan matches in particular, is that you start off and then you build over time. Like you start off slowly and you... Like, usually it's a case that with some of the greatest matches that I've ever seen in New Japan, 10 minutes in, you're just going, oh, this is a pretty good match. And then by the end of it, you're going, oh, this was unbelievably awesome. It's like so great. And I think the click moment was when Ospreay kind of just flipped a switch in his head and decided, yeah, I'm going to murder this guy. And that was when he just decided to go over to the announce table and try to put Omega's head through the announce table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which plays up to the match they had at Wrestle Kingdom, where Omega put Ospreay's head through one of the tables they had like set up by ringside, and to like actually like the table breaking. Ospreay wasn't able to do that quite enough, but he was able to put Omega through the kind of the top layer of the announce table, put his head through it, and like break that when he propped it up against the ring apron. And Omega's bleeding everywhere, and then it gets like properly violent and aggressive. Like they kick out Don Callis, who brought out like some security guards to protect Ospreay from the Canadians because he'd just spent his entire time, both before this match and then during this match, including some stuff with the Canadian flag that would maybe Chris Jericho taught him when Jericho did that with the Brazilian flag all those years ago, but. I think
for anybody who missed it, he put it between his legs, then he picked his nose with it.
Yeah, I don't think they're as nationalistic and violent as the Brazilians were towards Jericho when he did that. But I think that so he does that, but then Omega fights back. He gets just as aggressive by slamming Ospreay's face against the ring steps multiple times, then hitting a DDT on the ring steps. So they were playing him with a lot of stuff was calling back to stuff that they'd done on the Wrestle Kingdom show, probably the first 25 minutes or so. But then they go into a bit of overdrive with Ospreay getting handed the screwdriver by Callis, who came back to ringside. It's the one thing that you could possibly say is a little bit of a complaint about it, is that Callis just came back and the referee allowed it. And of course, the referee, Paul Turner, who's the worst referee in all of AEW.
It was pretty much just like, hey, I told you that you are gone here, but you know what? I guess it's fine. And they tried to play it off as, oh, he's risking a disqualification, but he didn't even address him whatsoever.
No. So, that was the one kind of nitpick that you could potentially have with this match. But then when Ospreay does use the screwdriver, gets Omega with it, then hits the Stormbreaker, but he manages to get his foot just barely on the ropes, which is a great near fall. And then Ospreay is able to kind of destroy Omega a little bit. Hits a V-trick, actually hits a Kamigoye, which is obviously Kota Ibushi's finisher. And then hits the One-Winged Angel, and Omega kicks out at one. Crowd goes absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's a good moment.
Yeah. Then they just start trading blows with each other for a while. Lots of V-triggers, lots of there was a cool Ripcord Hidden Blade, which I thought was just awesome. I just love Ospreay's that Hidden Blade elbow that he manages to pull out. It's just looks so violent. And then probably the thing that's getting gifted the most out of this match, which was the Tiger Driver 91, which is it's ill-advised for the long-term sake of your career to use that move very often, but it
gets pop.
If you do it once in a blue moon, then it gets that. It gets the reaction it does get, which is, oh my god, he's broken his neck. Or that really, kind of
it looked like it too. That's a brutal looking move. It doesn't look like there's any way that you can take that without it being a risk,
Yeah, I know. I don't get how you can do that safely. The only thing that I can even posit, the fact that potentially makes it safe, is that his head and neck isn't that far off the mat when Ospreay drops him. So maybe it's not enough of a fall or enough of it to do any real damage. But either way, it feels like a big risk. But they decided to do that, managed to get another near fall off of it before Ospreay does hit the Storm Zero, and not Storm Zero, the
Stormbreaker.
Stormbreaker, yeah. Got to get confused between that and Storm's move as well
in
the previous match. But Stormbreaker gets the victory, becomes the New Japan United States champion again. This isn't over. They still have they have a trilogy to complete, and I believe that will happen in Wrestle Kingdom. But yeah, this is. I don't know, because I did watch their Wrestle Kingdom match yesterday, and kind of preparation for it, to just think about it. They're two very similar but different matches. I mean, the major difference being that Kenny Omega was playing the heel in the previous match, and Ospreay was the clear heel in this one. So I don't know which one of those two that I like most, but this was undoubtedly the best match on this show, and arguably it's definitely high up there for AEW's best match of the year. It'll probably be high up in my conversation right now. It's probably the front runner for me for the strictly AEW match of the year.
Yeah, my current other matches that I have down for the rankings, which I might have to go back and rewatch them just to really kind of debate between them. The Four Pillars match, a Double or Nothing, is on there. Omega against Vikingo.
Yeah.
On Dynamite, and the 60-minute Iron Man match. MJF and Danielson.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. Yeah, that'd definitely be a high pick as well. I'd also put in I'd say Anarchy Arena's up there for me as well.
You know what? Yeah, I'm surprised I don't have that on there. Maybe I've just forgot because I remember liking that quite a bit. Or maybe I had liked it, but I thought that it wasn't as good to go on the list. I don't remember for sure, but this definitely in the running for that because this was it was great, start to finish. And I don't know if it was in the best spot of the night for what followed it and everything, but at the very least for this match, it ended up not being one of those things where you started off with this match and then everything went downhill or anything. So,
yeah,
at least on that front, again, 2 major thumbs up. Great finish to this. Great, great everything except for, I would say, that little callous thing that you were talking about where it's like, does he really need to come back out and do that without it making it seem a little bit weird? But it works. I wasn't super big on the trios tag team match that followed this. Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and Minoru Suzuki against Sting, Darby Allin, and Tetsuya Naito. To me, this was one that had some moments that was just sort of like, all right, maybe we can kind of trim this a little bit. Maybe it doesn't need to go on quite as long. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say out of all the matches, it's probably in places the clunkiest.
Mm-hmm. Especially with like the Sting and Jericho stuff.
Yeah, I thought it's quite interesting, like, because I've heard some people talking about Sting recently about how like he isn't great at improvisation.
Yeah,
and he's like a guy that's always been led through matches. So I think that he was getting a little bit confused in where he was supposed to be at certain times. So I think that, or maybe it's not as much improvisation he's bad at. Maybe he's actually bad at like, the planned spots thing, because he's very much of a different era where you just call everything in the ring. So having like a lot of planned out, okay, you've got to be in this spot to do this, like maybe that doesn't work for him as well. But there were still cool moments in this. You had Naito and Sammy Guevara starting off and doing their little like poses in the ring while after they'd hit some big moves. You had the cool spot of Sammy, Jericho and Suzuki all posed up on each other. That just got just like a funny little pop. Had Minoru Suzuki forearm Darby Allin so hard in the face that he spits out blood. So that was, I presumably he had that planned, but to just do that. And yeah, again, the biggest like probably highlight thing of this match was Sammy Guevara hitting a 630 to Sting on the outside through a table. Which
was one of those moments that seems like Sting forgot what was necessarily supposed to happen, because I started typing out, I don't know if Sting was supposed to get out of the way in time and he didn't, or if he was supposed to just look like he was supposed to, like you would logically do, and eat the move regardless. But he took the move, and then I was like, okay, well, maybe he wasn't supposed to move out of the way. And then a moment later, he's back up and he's in the ring, and I'm like, okay, no, he was supposed to move, I think.
See, I would think that as well, except that I remember, again, because I see this spot come up every now and again on Twitter, of that match between Sting and Darby Allin versus 2.0 before they joined JAS, where they both powerbomb Sting through a table, and then Sting gets immediately back up.
I think that's just like part of his character now.
Well, yeah, I think that's always been part of his character in degree. It's like he gets hit by a big move and then he just no-sells and gets back up. He's always kind of, for a long time at the very least, especially since when he became like an icon status, that's kind of one of his go-tos. So he just came back in the ring. I don't know whether that's the case in this one, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. And yeah, there were some spots where he got like a little bit clunky towards the end, but you had you eventually have Naito get the pin on Suzuki, right?
It was Naito pinned Suzuki. Yeah.
So yeah, you get so you get the baby faces get the victory. I think that's probably the right call for this one. Again, it was just a nice little buffer match between the two like biggest matches on the card. So I think for that purpose it served its job, and I think the crowd was just into Sting and Jericho and Suzuki, and so it was just a lot of name value people just doing some cool stuff with each other. Nothing super spectacular, but as I say, served its purpose to be a break between one awesome match and another awesome match.
And obviously, this isn't over, so they're going to do some kind of continuation of that. Seems like they're going to do Painmaker Jericho and Sammy Guevara against Sting and Darby Allin in a tornado tag on Wednesday. So, we'll get more bat stuff on that. Maybe Guevara and Jericho will get the win, and we'll kind of keep this going. Maybe it'll end up just being the official switchover with Sammy being like done with Jericho. Maybe we carry out on after that. But it's not over yet. So this ultimately just sort of filled in some time. I think it's one of the ones that, it's good to see these people on the card, but overall, I think it fell short. And then we got our main event. Bryan Danielson against Kazuchika Okada. Final countdown. Playing for Bryan Danielson. Very cool.
Yep, didn't take long for that song to become available for them to snap it up, so it's good for them.
One of my favorite songs of all time. So yeah, I love that just outright. I used to actually use that for, even though there's like no equivalency, I used to use that to pump people up for the plays in high school. Which is like, like, oh yeah, man, like we're going to go out there and then act. It's not quite exactly the 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, like, there's a lot of things to kind of criticize Tony Khan's approach to certain things about, but I think one thing you have to universally praise him for is that he's willing to put his money in his pocket to get great music for guys. So
they figure there's CM Punk, there's Jungle Boy, Moxley, Young Bucks, Orange Cassidy now. Like, there's a lot that he's paying. I don't know how much money he's paying, but I'm sure it's not cheap. He said before about Final Countdown how much money that was going. So maybe it's a one-off. Maybe it's going to continue. I think it's probably more of a one-off.
It might be a big show thing.
Yeah,
maybe
could be that.
It wouldn't be like week to week TV, but maybe for shows like this they'll pull it out.
We had a holy shit chant before the bell even started, of course, and to be perfectly honest, not as good as the Ospreay and Omega match to me. Good match by, like, of course I'm going to tell people, like, if you didn't see it and you were interested, go ahead and check it out. But I kind of expected it to be a little bit better. And I think part of that is I feel like it might have ended a little bit early. I don't know. It at least gave me that vibe. I know Sap was asking in the chat if maybe it got called, like, maybe they ran out of time or something. It felt like that a little bit to me, because the ending here, I was like, all right, well, it's at the end. I mean, for anybody who didn't see it, Okada taps out, and flat out, I was wrong about that. I just thought that Danielson was going to lose, and I thought he was going to lose by pinfall. I did not expect a submission whatsoever, but it just didn't feel like that was leading into the end segment to me, so that took me out of it a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that they held back a bit, and I think there's a deliberate reason why they held back. But I thought that they did a lot of really cool stuff together. Again, it's one of those things that you've seen them do all this stuff before, but it's just the manner in which they lay it out, which is so excellent. And it's just one of those, they start with like some good technical wrestling, and then you get some stuff like Okada diving onto Bryan on the outside, and like a tombstone pole driver on the ramp, which is kind of like the big spot, because then you have the shot of like Bryan convulsing in the ring, and Doctor trying to get involved, and Okada basically saying, no, I want to finish him off, and Danielson was like just playing possum and hits him with the psycho knee. But yeah, there was a lot of like submission work with the
the money clip, is that what he calls it?
Yeah, the money clip, and obviously the label lock, and a few other bits and pieces going in there. There's actually one of the things I didn't mention about the Ospreay and Omega thing that actually just like reminds me now is at one point Ospreay gets Omega in the sharpshooter, because obviously that's what you do if you're a heel and you're trying to rile up the Canadian crowd.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, he puts him in the crossface, and the crowd start chanting "You sick fuck."
All right, yeah.
Which is funny. But yeah, I thought that they worked really well together, and then eventually gets to the point where I think it's obviously a bit of tiredness because again the crowd have been there for 5+ hours watching a lot of great wrestling, so eventually you are going to lose a bit of steam. So I think that they maybe expected, because they had a Okada kick out of like the running knee, and Danielson kicked out of the Rainmaker, which is something that rarely ever happens. You rarely see someone kick out the Rainmaker. They just had Okada just do a few more like short arm Rainmakers to weaken Danielson, but then Danielson avoids one, gets him into initially the label lock, but they've been telling the story throughout that Danielson's right arm was pretty much fucked. So he had to almost like just lay Okada's head onto his arm and use the entire strength of his left arm to hold him in place. And I think they did something that Zack Sabre Jr. is known for doing, and also it's kind of like what I imagine the equivalent of a Kurt Angle ankle lock, but then grapevine in the leg, in that he goes for the bell lock, but realizing that's not going to work, and Okada might be able to reach out and grab the ropes. He then just goes for the other arm and holds it in a very painful looking, like just pressing his whole foot down on top of the arm to hyperextend it as much as possible.
Which I don't know how they do some of those things without actually getting injured.
Yeah, I know.
Because, I mean, shit, like I can get out of bed and be like, wow, my back hurts. Oh my God, I almost fell down. And they're like twisting in a way that it's like, yeah, that's probably hurting some tendons there. Or like you're pushing your arm to a limit. And that's a legitimate submission. Like that looks like that hurt like a son of a bitch. But it just didn't feel like that was going to be the end of the match to me.
No, I feel that it was a little bit, well, more than a little bit surprising, because I just assumed, well, yeah, Okada's not just going to be in G1, but is an outright favourite for like winning the G1. So it surprised me that they would not only just have him lose, but lose in definitive submission, like loss, and having him tap out to Danielson and having him celebrating at the end of it. What that just absolutely points to is they're fighting at Wrestle Kingdom.
I think so, yeah.
Because I think if that's the case, then this was smart, because it gives the AEW guy gets the victory here, so he gets to move forward and gets a bit of momentum coming out of this. I think that he needs to move into some kind of either title program or big program. Who knows? Maybe he's the guy that beats Orange Cassidy for the International Championship.
Could be, yeah.
But yeah, because I think you need to build off of that victory. But then you have them fight at Wrestle Kingdom. Bryan gets to wrestle a Tokyo Dome show, which I'm sure is probably on his bucket list. Okada can get the victory there, and it also means that you can have that big match on there, and so maybe there's less pressure on having a super awesome big match as your world title match, because if Okada's not wrestling for it, then, well, I'm now fully convinced that the title match at Wrestle Kingdom is going to be Sanada versus Naito for the IWGP Championship. So
is that partially because Naito got the pin?
No, not really. I mean, it's just a case of that's the story, because Sanada was part of Naito's group, and then he left Naito's group to become world champion. So Sanada's also fought 2 other members of LIJ and defended the title successfully against them. So it would only make sense that he takes on the leader of LIJ at the Tokyo Dome. So yeah, and then you can have what I imagine would also be Okada versus Danielson and probably Omega and Ospreay 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that would make Wrestle Kingdom one of the again, a front runner for show of the year next year. But yeah, I thought this was a solid, like I would say like unspectacular, but it was still a very, very good match between 2 of the best in the world right now. And I imagine that they will kick it up into a slightly higher gear for the second one. This was here to set, as well as be an excellent match in its own right, to set the foundation for what we'll see more of in the near future. So yeah, and again, I think that's good in terms of the negotiations and the relationship between them, that they get like a victory each.
And you could leave it at that too. You don't need to do a third one. It could just be
absolutely.
1-1, and we let the fans pick between that.
I think it's one of those things that because I haven't probably listened to it, but I was just seeing some of the stuff that apparently Bryan said in his promo to the crowd that he delivered afterwards, and it seems like he's quite interested in doing some more stuff with New Japan. So I would not be surprised that if he does wrestle at both the Tokyo and Wrestle Kingdom, that he also would be quite interested in doing a G1.
Maybe next year, yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to obviously this year, they can't.
It's already pretty much settled up. According to Dave Meltzer, put it in here, Daniel suffered a fractured arm 10 minutes into the match.
Jeez.
So maybe that's part of the reason why I didn't feel as much.
Yeah, it could be that. I mean, that's at least as good of an excuse as you could possibly get.
Yeah, and also part of the reason why. So Danielson was just literally like, just selling the arm great. No, he literally broke his arm. So, so yeah.
Wonder how long he's going to be out for that then.
Hopefully not super long. I mean, he still managed to wrestle the match with it, but then again, like you never know. It depends how big a fracture's slightly different from a proper break. So
right.
So mate, hopefully it's just like I would say like obviously we hope it is minor, but hopefully it's as little time as possible because I feel like you'd want to capitalize off this. But again, he doesn't necessarily need to be it doesn't necessarily have to be like fighting for a world title or a super big program coming off the back of this, especially if he's going to just be fighting Okada again at Wrestle Kingdom. So.
Kind of depends on if they were planning on doing BCC in Blood and Guts. Because then that takes out one of the main players of that. But I guess we'll figure that out down the line.
I mean,
maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it is.
Yeah, I mean, they can always call on Shota to fill the place again, like Shota Umino, like he did in this one. So to fill the spot that Danielson wouldn't. But yeah, it was a great way to end as a really awesome show.
Yeah, so let us know what you guys had to say about this, whether you were listening to this, well after checking out the pay-per-view, or if you were able to listen live and you just weren't chatting it up necessarily in the comments, whatever it is. Or if you're listening to this outside of YouTube, of course, hop on over to Facebook or send a tweet, whatever it might be. But we got another pay-per-view coming up next week with WWE Money in the Bank. Some more pay-per-view point content for the next major main event that we've got for the podcast. We got the predictions coming up, another round of the hot tags, and then the Money in the Bank post show. So make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure you ring that little notification bell. Make sure that you have all your alerts set up. And of course, make sure you are clicking around on all that good stuff that we normally say here. I mentioned about the Patreon and clicking the join button and all, but also go over to fanboysanonymous.com, check out the Blue Brand and all the things that are happening over there. Hit up that Patreon, subscribe to that YouTube channel, so on and so forth. Make sure you check out that 5th chapter of The Batman A Nighttime Story and find out how I am rounding out the very, very beginning of a 100 story thing. It seems like it's like, oh, that's the end. And it's like, oh, okay, that's the beginning. And there's 95 more chapters. But that's how the Blueprint Project works. It's a big undertaking. And you know me, big fan of The Undertaker, big fan of this. So keep all that in mind, and also go to anthonymango.com or amangotree.com and check out all the different links that you can see there, including my personal accounts at Tony Mango. Rob's not here for this podcast, but go ahead and follow him at Dude Felice. Callum, route us out.
You can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. You can check out the power rankings over in the Smark at moment. So I put out the most recent one on Saturday, so you can see what the latest rankings are for the WWE Superstars, who's in the top 10 for this week. And then you can also check out the Fantasy League, where standings are changing quite significantly all the time. It's still very close between all three of us as we head towards Money in the Bank, where teams will expand and maybe a couple of changes will be made. And yeah, it's also the shows where the most points are typically scored, especially if one of our guys or girls is able to get hold of the briefcase, because that picks up plenty of points. So check that out over on Smark at the moment, or you can head to wwefantasyleague.com.
All right, everybody, that's going to do us in for the Forbidden Door 2023 Pay-Per-View Point post show. Thanks for listening to us, and we will see you next time. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.